We all tend to believe we are skilled at certain things, perhaps even above average. In some fields, many of us excel at specific activities, but the reality is that we often deceive ourselves about our true ability in various areas. It's likely that we both overestimate and underestimate our abilities in different aspects of life, and how mistaken we are often surprises us. In a 1999 study, psychologists David Dunning and Justin Kruger identified a phenomenon later termed the Dunning-Kruger effect. After subjecting participants to a series of tests to assess their abilities in humor, logical reasoning, and grammar, they asked them to evaluate their own performance compared to their peers. In Dunning and Kruger's study, it was found that individuals who performed below average on the tests often overestimated their own performance, believing they did much better than they actually did. On the other hand, those who performed well tended to underestimate their performance compared to their peers. Essentially, the study identified a cognitive bias where less experienced or knowledgeable individuals in a particular area tend to perceive themselves as more competent than they actually are, while more experienced individuals often doubt their abilities or underestimate themselves. The cognitive biases known as the Dunning-Kruger effect are a subject of debate among researchers. At first glance, this phenomenon may seem paradoxical and curious. The explanation is understandable. When someone has limited knowledge about a subject or lacks experience in a specific area, they may not have the ability to recognize their own incompetence. In other words, they lack the awareness needed to understand what they don't know. If someone is incompetent, they may not realize their own incompetence. The skills required to produce a correct answer are exactly the skills needed to recognize what constitutes a correct answer, said Dunning. On the other hand, individuals with more knowledge and experience in a particular field understand the complexity, breadth, and challenges involved in being correct or successful. Therefore, it's common for them to question their own abilities and believe that others are more competent in the area than they actually are. This often leads them to underestimate themselves. When compared to others, examples of the Dunning-Kruger effect demonstrated in studies include areas such as driving. Studies have shown that 93% of American drivers believe they are better than average behind the wheel. This phenomenon also often appears in the workplace, where employees tend to overestimate their performance compared to their colleagues. In some companies, more than 40% of employees believe they are among the top 5% performers in terms of performance. Clearly, not everyone can be above average. During the processes of learning, strategizing, evaluating, and reflecting, there is another crucial aspect known as metacognition. Metacognition involves being aware of one's own thought processes. Essentially, it's thinking about how we think. This plays a pivotal role in learning and is essential to becoming competent in any area. Through metacognition, we can identify patterns, errors, and challenges in our thinking, and then employ strategies to address and overcome them. According to Dunning and Kruger, when someone lacks metacognitive abilities in a specific area, it hinders their ability to properly reflect on their own thinking in that domain. This lack of awareness about mental processes and knowledge makes it difficult for them to identify where and when errors may occur. Consequently, these individuals tend not to recognize their own mistakes. This phenomenon can be unsettling on an individual level, as it reveals an awareness of unknown aspects over which we have no control. While not a new revelation, the extent of ignorance and the areas where failures may arise, despite apparent confidence, can be disconcerting. However, it's even more unsettling when considered on a broad societal scale. What's intriguing is that in many cases, incompetence doesn't leave people confused, puzzled, or cautious. Instead, the less skilled individuals often display unwarranted confidence, driven by something that appears to them as knowledge, noted Dunning, Iskrever, partly due to the phenomenon known as the Dunning-Kruger effect. People without specific qualifications often express themselves with great confidence and in a loud tone on certain subjects. Meanwhile, more qualified individuals tend to be more reserved, less simplistic, and adopt a more thoughtful and cautious approach. This also applies to high-level experts, who may underestimate the distance between their knowledge and the average understanding. As a result, they may face challenges when trying to effectively communicate their expertise to the general public. Additionally, there are situations where complex concepts simply cannot be fully explained quickly or in accessible terms to non-experts. Which of these is more persuasive to a general audience that cannot distinguish between correct and false information, the confident but unskilled amateur, the competent but cautious intermediate, or the highly competent expert who struggles to communicate? It is increasingly common for everyone to have an opinion on almost everything. It may have always been like this. Perhaps having access to all the world's information, but only enough time to read the headlines and still feeling compelled to comment, has heightened this human tendency. Either way, because of this and combined with the Dunning-Kruger effect, some of the most heard voices are often the least qualified, useful, or accurate. They prioritize confidence and charisma over nuance and care. The truly important voices are often quieter, harder to understand, or still searching for the right words and ways to express themselves. It's natural to want to be heard and have an impact. It's admirable to be seen as respected, followed, and capable of making a difference. Being a voice of change and impact is a noble goal, but sometimes the greatest impact comes from silence. Does the world really need more voices, or does it need more thoughtful voices? The irony here isn't lost, being a voice that doesn't stay silent. However, the point isn't just about complete silence, it's about being assertive with sensitivity, or at least striving to be. It's inevitable to have opinions, but we can be more thoughtful about how we hold on to them. After understanding the Dunning-Kruger effect, you might feel that you're no longer susceptible to it, or perhaps you've always felt immune to it. You're not the type to deceive yourself about your abilities, you're cautious, reflective, and self-aware. You don't make claims about what you don't know, you acknowledge your blind spots. However, that's how blind spots actually work. Do you think someone subject to the Dunning-Kruger effect, who overestimates their abilities or knowledge, realizes it? The key point is that often we don't realize we're affected by this phenomenon. The first rule of the Dunning-Kruger Club is precisely not knowing you're part of it, stated Dunning. In fact, believing you're immune to the Dunning-Kruger effect is itself an example of that effect. We know enough about it to think we can avoid it, but not enough to realize we probably can't, at least not automatically or universally. However, perhaps we can overcome it more often by fostering a certain awareness and attitude, being quieter more regularly, being willing to be less conspicuous, allowing our voice, our presence, our existence not to always be at the center of attention. We might avoid falling into the traps of the effect less often and lean more towards its positive outcomes. In reality, the average person is well-read and experienced in a relatively narrow range of subjects, at most. We shouldn't try to expand beyond that or pretend to know more than we actually do. Beyond a certain point, the quantity of opinions we hold is usually inversely proportional to their quality and accuracy. Often, we struggle to accurately discern which areas we fit into and which of our opinions are truly worth sharing. But that's okay, the goal here is simply to do our best. Ultimately, the Dunning-Kruger effect is a continuous scale that accompanies us throughout life. As we take on new ventures, face new challenges, and pursue new goals, there will inevitably be areas where we lack competence. And as long as we remain inexperienced in these areas, we'll be partially blind to the true extent of our incompetence. However, as we keep learning and growing, we also gain new knowledge and gradually adjust our perception of our actual abilities. Life follows a continuous cycle of realizing how little we knew, how often we were wrong, and the real complexity of things, and then rediscovering it repeatedly. Our understanding of ourselves is limited, distorted, and often confusing. Our biases and oversights have tangible impacts on our lives. They disconnect us from reality and shape our decisions in ways we often don't fully grasp. Books like Thinking, Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman, You're About to Make a Serious Mistake by Olivier Sibony, and Know Yourself by Stephen Fleming explore these themes. All of these books provide unique and powerful insights into how we think, how often we misunderstand our thoughts and feelings, how we can stray from the truth, and how we can regain better control of our thought processes to make wiser decisions. As we learn more, our ability to grasp the subtleties of things becomes stronger and more refined. Thanks a lot for sticking around for the whole video, and catch you next time. Remember to give us a like, drop a comment, and subscribe to our channel.